to episode 3 of Pause for Peace, a podcast brought to you by the congregation of Hillwood Presbyterian Church USA that gathers on the west side of Nashville, Tennessee, in order to be about seeking to follow Christ, to follow the way of love, which we believe to be the way of God in the world each day. And we do that most prominently every day through positive community impact. My name is Jule, and I am excited to be able to share with you today what may be one of my favorite ways of getting myself re-centered, of being able to pause from the busyness, from the chaos that can become life, from the forgetfulness that I can have in order to return to the love that dwells in me and that dwells in you and that dwells in all things. This is a meditative form of a centering practice that flows out of the Eastern Hesychast tradition, which is an Eastern Christian form of understanding the way of Christ, and was introduced to me by the work of Megan Watterson and Mary Magdalene Revealed. I have adapted this form of prayer practice, as has Megan Watterson, from the Hesychast form of truly focusing all of your energy, even literally like craning their neck in order to focus their everything on their heart space, in order to be able to expand this space of love and be able to radiate peace out from their very community. So let me tell you how I even came to this practice of heart-centered meditation. Well, for about the past 2 years, I have been doing this deep dive into Mary the Magdalene. I grew to be more interested in Mary the Magdalene as year after year after year as a Christian preacher, I would come to the stories of Holy Week, of what we call Holy Week, this time of the arrest, the betrayal, the death, the crucifixion, the resurrection of Jesus the Christ. And I would come to these stories year after year and again see in the Gospels of the New Testament that there was a prominent person who was a part of this journey, somebody that I had not really known very much about. And it was the woman named Mary Magdalene. In fact, for those who are Christians and have before us a Bible, a New Testament that includes the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and the fourth Gospel that we often refer to as the Gospel of John. When we do a deep dive into these parts of the Bible, these Gospels of the Bible that tell the good news of Jesus the Christ, I begin to see, as have many others, that every time the circle of women who have been a part of Jesus' ministry, every time that circle of women is mentioned, every time these women who have been a part of this movement of love, of following behind this leader Jesus, every time they're mentioned, the first woman that is named is Mary, the one being called the Magdalene, which is how the Greek actually reads. Mary, the one being called the Magdalene. Interestingly enough, in the Gospel of Matthew, Mark, and that fourth Gospel, the Gospel we often refer to as John, it is at the time of Jesus' death that we first see the name of Mary, the one being called the Magdalene. It is while Yeshua is dying, Jesus is dying on a cross, being put to death by the empire that was so threatened by this force of love that he was about, this full, inclusive love. as they're putting him to death, Mary the Magdalene, Mary, the one being called the Magdalene, is named as a woman that is present at his death, as a woman who is involved in preparing him for burial, as the woman either by herself or named first, when the women are named that come on Easter morning to discover an empty tomb. And it is Mary, the one being called the Magdalene, that is at every step on that journey. Which, as a Christian preacher, gets me seriously curious about what is going on here. What is the role of the Magdalene? What is the role of Mary, the one being called the Magdalene, who clearly had some very important work to play in this life and presence of Jesus, the Christ? In fact, tradition reminds us, and I especially see this when I look at the gorgeous art that is very prevalent in Christian tradition of Mary, the one being called the Magdalene. Tradition shows us again and again that this is the anointer. This is the one who is shown holding an alabaster jar. That alabaster jar that is filled with the ointments from the earth, the essential oils from the earth, the herbs from the earth that are used in preparing Jesus, preparing this one to go onto this path of dying in order to be risen to new life. Tradition has claimed Mary, the one being called the Magdalene, to be this one who is the anointer of Jesus, preparing him for all that will come and greeting him on Easter morning, and once again greeting him with that alabaster jar, those healing ointments that she is taking to the tomb. Do a little search on images of Mary the Magdalene, and you will find very, very wild, prominent images, often showing an alabaster jar and a skull. A human skull, literally showing us that this is the one who can stand with and through the process of dying in order to be risen to new life. Well, I have read tomes about Mary the Magdalene. I have practiced this form of heart-centered meditation, guided by the part of the Christian tradition that actually followed in the path of her as a prominent teacher, a part of the Christian tradition that was suppressed for about 1,500 years, but a part of the tradition that was honored. Mary the Magdalene being honored as the myrrh bearer in the Eastern Church, in the Eastern Christian version of the church. And even now, beginning in the 20th century, in the Western version of the church that is under the leadership of the Pope and the Roman Catholic Church, that part of the church even declaring, indeed, this is the apostle to the apostles. Mary the Magdalene is the one being sent forth by the risen Christ in order to spread this awesome, amazing news that dying is not the end. There is always a rising to new life. So, Mary the Magdalene, it is believed, lived the last probably 30 years of her life on the soil of what we now know as France. And I've had the great privilege of taking 2 pilgrimages in the last 2 years to this area of southern France, where I was so bathed in beauty, inspired by visual after visual, story after story, song after song, honoring the role of Mary the Magdalene in this work of Christianity, in this work of bringing to our awareness this energy of love that is in all things. And so in southern France at the time when Mary and the other followers of Jesus landed there, believed to be the area of the Gauls, the area of the Gaels, or the Gaelic language, which we know to be the area of the Celts, where they were welcomed and invited to be a part of celebrating and honoring the God that is about love. And so Mary, the Magdalene, shows us the path of returning to love and doing that through our heart space. So one more little tidbit about Mary Magdalene. Part of how we now know more of her story is that in the late 19th century, 1896, in an antiquities market in Cairo, Egypt, an antiquities manuscript dealer actually found the Gospel of Mary. And 2 more versions of that manuscript came forth in the preceding years. And finally, there's a very interesting story of how it all came to be. But finally, in the late 20th century, in the 1990s, finally, the Gospel of Mary came into English versions that are accessible to basically anybody. You can do a web search for the Gospel of Mary and read your own version of the Gospel of Mary. This text that scholars believe was like squirreled away in the earth until a day would come when we again were ready, when the collective was ready to hear about the role of Mary the Magdalene and to hear about a way of Christianity that might have been a little bit different than what became the prominent role and way of the tradition, codified in the 4th century CE and continued through the ages. In the Gospel of Mary, one of the interesting things we learn is that Mary is able to see and to be with the teacher, Jesus, even after he has died and is in that process of rising. Mary is able to see through her heart space the teacher and to hear and to interact with Jesus, even as she enters into this visionary place, this eye of the heart, this organ of spiritual perception that the tradition has talked of as the way that we can access and connect with the divine. The Gospel of Mary shows us a way in which we can be liberated, in which we can be free, in which the ego attachments, the powers that we all have that keep us in positions of smallness, that don't allow us to move into our wholeness, there's a way the Gospel of Mary shows us that we can be free. Now, we have lost portions of the Gospel, but the portions that we have show us how we can move through and be liberated here and now so that we can be integrated, body and soul, ego and soul, matter and soul, so that we can become what is called the anthropos. These full human beings that Christ is calling us to be, is teaching the followers to be, is asking us to be integrated beings that understand the work of love that is needed in the world. So as an energy healer, somebody who works with healing touch, I think about the heart space. I think about the energy of the heart, because in this prayer practice, we're going to focus our energy in the heart in order to dive deep and connect with our soul, the part of God that lives in all of us. Some of us might call that the Holy Spirit. Some of us might call that seeking to encounter Christ living in us. Some of us might even call that, if you're a Christian person, you might call that connecting with Yeshua, with Jesus, through our heart. Well, the heart space, I understand that in an energetic perspective, this energy center in the middle of our chest is actually the energy of unconditional love. It is the energy of innate harmony. In Healing Beyond Borders, Healing Touch, in which I'm certified, we talk about the heart space being this energy center of self-forgiveness. In the Jungian tradition, the dream world in which I am trained, what we know is that when we fail to accept energies in us, aspects of ourself that are there, that are just a part of who we are, when we fail to embrace those, when we send them to the shadow, when we banish them, when we deny them, put them back there, what happens? They grow. And as we go about our life, we bump into other people who mirror that energy to us. And what do? We attack. We viciously seek to deny, and we viciously seek to banish those energies in others as well. Because what we cannot accept in ourselves, we will not accept in others. Jesus is actually calling us to a different way. He's calling us to this way of being integrated, of being whole, of being loving. And so what that means is that we must accept all aspects of ourself. Now, all aspects of ourself may be acting in destructive ways. These aspects of ourself that we might have banished or that we might be denying may be pulling us from who we are made and meant to be. And so we need to find a way to integrate with them and to be about, with God's help, be about moving them in the direction of healing, of wholeness for all things. But when we banish any aspect of ourself, we will do violence to others and to ourselves. We will do violence to the very earth that is under our feet. This heart-centered meditative practice is one way that we can come back into balance with the energies that live within us, with the aspect of ourself that is body and the aspect of ourself that is soul, with the aspect of ourself that is human and the aspect of ourself that is of spirit, is of God. All of those can come back together for good. So in this time of peace, of pausing for peace, this seems like such an incarnational way of pausing to create peace in us, to reground ourselves in centeredness. Because indeed, this form of meditative practice is really an intersectional form of meditative practice, where my awareness, my consciousness is going to seek to dive deep through this heart, through the center of my heart, in order to connect with my soul, to connect with the aspect of God that lives in each one of us. And so I invite you to be about this practice today as a way that you can pause for peace. I'm going to ask you to start by getting yourself nice and comfortable in your chair. If you're in your bed, just make sure you don't drift off to sleep. I guess if you do, you can restart this podcast and listen once again. But get yourself grounded well in your place that you are. And I'm going to invite you to call awareness to your feet. This is a very grounded, again, we're seeking to integrate ego, body, and soul, right? So this is a very grounded form of meditative practice. Just take a few deep breaths. In this practice, as we're focusing all of our energy on our heart space, that we might live a little bit more innate harmony, that we might be a little bit more self-forgiving, that we might be able to live as unconditional love in this world. So as we focus on our heart, we can do so with our breath and our intention. Our breath, our intention, focus on our heart space, calling us back whenever we wander, whenever our monkey mind goes wild in the middle of these moments of stillness. So using our breath right now, let's take a few deep breaths from our diaphragm, our squeeze box, Squeezing out and in, allowing the energy to just flow. All the way from our belly. And every time we exhale, we just let go. Whatever's not serving us, whatever is causing stress or anxiety in us, just let it go. Any fear that we might have, just let it go. And on your third big breath, I want you to literally draw your attention to your heart space, using one hand at least on your heart space. The other hand you might have on your belly, taking that third deep breath. Releasing it. And we're going to set the intention right now that we're going to integrate body and soul, that we're going to come together through our heart space, this deep dive from our heart space into our soul, so that we can rest just for a few moments in this pool of divine love, this fractal of God that resides as soul in all of us. And as you take another breath, grounded in your feet, tethered to the earth, I invite you to set that intention that you're going to unite with soul. Get yourself recentered fully in who you truly are. This beautiful, ensouled body. If you'll just imagine that heart space, that energy under the palm of your hand expanding, you can maybe even see like a portal is opening so that you can do this deep dive into your soul. And if you will, set the intention with your breath, with your awareness on your heart space, that you are greeting your soul now as if a long lost friend has come to you and you are so excited to be able to say hello. Hello, you, beautiful one, cherished one. I am so glad to see you. Might even help you to visualize reaching out your hand and taking the hand of your beloved friend, embracing your cherished loved one, this soul that is coming to greet you, to unite for a few moments with the you understand yourself to be. And if you're finding it difficult to stay in this place of stillness, I invite you to just use the words return to the love that is in me. Just return to the love that is in me. Me being you, so return to the love that is in you. You can use your breath as well to call you back to this stillness, to this intention of uniting with soul. And before we enter into a few moments of quiet, I want to remind you that soul flees wherever there is domination, the one thing that soul will not tolerate is control. And so if you will just allow whatever might come, whatever might happen in these few moments, your feet are grounded, you are here on the earth, you're not going anywhere, you're going to be here on the earth. Love is surrounding you always. You are infused with love. So if you can just allow this reunion to take place within you. You may even want to begin a listening session with soul, just putting forth before soul a question, a concern, a word for hope that you might need for the living of your days, and then allow soul to speak to you, whether it will be through an image, a color, a word, a sound, whatever, a sensation, whatever might come. So in these moments, we can set that intention that soul truly will reveal to you the deep wisdom that you need, which is a way that God can be speaking to you. Whenever you go about this practice on your own, I invite you to pause your podcast and allow for a time of deep silence. Before our purposes together right now, I'm going to invite you to begin to come forth from this deep well of love, these moments of stillness, by bathing this experience in gratitude, by thanking your soul, by thanking God for showing up and for being present to you today, for allowing for these moments of stillness, and for gifting you in whatever way you have received, even if all it has been is through monkey mind, or through darkness, or through a sense of nothingness. All of these are messages to you, maybe even a call into the darkness, where we will find we still reside in the arms of love. So offering internally a sense of deep appreciation for the wisdom that you have mined in these moments, for the gift that has been revealed to you. And coming forth out of the silence, when you are ready, you might want to return both hands to your heart center. Maybe bring palms together at your heart center, wiggling your fingers a little bit. Heel toe, heel toe, heel toe back into the earth to bring you grounded once again into these moments. And when you're ready, I invite you to open your eyes and truly notice in what way you have returned to love. Notice in what way you may feel peace expanding in you as you have been about this practice of heart-centered meditation. Thank you so much for joining me, and I encourage you to keep on pausing for peace every day. This is your way to be about tending your own body, soul, but also being about peace in all the world. Blessings, and I'll see you next week for episode 4.